My friends, today we're going to be doing a video on how to make things sound a little bit more vintage, colored, and kind of just old in general. Older recordings had a sound to them, and it typically didn't have as much transient information as we have and as much high end, and it's really pleasing to the ear for those reasons, I think. As we got into more modern recordings, we were able to capture things better, but that also got to us adding lots of treble to our songs and being really picky with having sharp transient information on our guitars and our snare drums and whatever. So by the end of this video, we'll have definitely gotten to the bottom of what made things sound colored, made them sound old, and had that vintage vibe to them. Anyways, Miami here with JST, and I'm excited to dive into this. I'm gonna be using JST LOFI, one of our new plugins for the demonstrations for this stuff. It's really great at bringing the vintage vibe out and kind of adding an old school feel to stuff. I've been using it a lot lately. Did it in this cover I did recently for Bring Me the Horizon. Baby, I don't belong on this planet. Red crescent moons all over my head. Also used it on this guitar part on my Instagram reel the other day. Add me if you guys want. I post a lot of JST related stuff. Instagram is still evaluating, but let's get into it. The first thing that comes to mind when thinking of old recordings to me. One, it was noisy. There was nothing to be done about this. Old analog gear was noisy, and we did everything we could back then to try to lower the noise, and now it's an interesting thing where we're trying to add a little bit of it back because recordings have gotten too clean and we're used to hearing stuff from older times. So one of the easiest ways to do this is using tape emulations, sometimes cassette emulations, VHS emulations, stuff like that. I'm gonna go through what those sound like so you can kind of get accustomed to hearing those sounds. Here's a little demonstration of that. Now, when you add those sounds to audio, it starts giving you a retro feeling. It's something that's kind of felt, and obviously you're gonna be able to hear it, but there's just something about the way that it affects the audio and makes it move. Take a listen as we go through this example, testing it out on some guitars. Okay, awesome. Now we understand what the noise elements are. One of my favorite go-tos is typically like a tape emulation, but there's a lot of cool stuff to actually use. There's one in this plugin that you have to load that I think is really cool. So I'm gonna show you my personal favorite. And yeah, that's what we have to do as far as noise. Now, number two, what's really important in making things sound more vintage and old school is simply using filters, right? So by using high pass and low pass filters, you can drastically change the sound of an audio source to make it feel like it's from another time period, because there just wasn't that much high end going through stuff back then. People weren't doing that. Everything kind of had a bit of a muffled feeling, and that's even drums. Now we try to replicate that by putting like a ring on a snare drum or a piece of paper or a wallet or whatever. We'll do anything trying to get that dampening sound because it's a little bit less ear piercing. Let's take some drums right now, and we're going to high pass and low pass them to make them feel a little bit more vintage as we go through the rest of the examples with this plugin. if you don't have JST Lo-Fi, I mean, there's other things that can kind of get you to where it is. It just has a lot of loaded options in this that you'll see as we go along through the video. The best way that I could show the examples was with this, because we specifically created it to do this thing. So noise and filters are done. One other thing that can make things sound old school is by messing with the sample rate, or by bit crushing things. By changing the amount of bits that are happening through the sample, you can get a very crushed sound. So let's mess with that a little bit and kind of put it on a video game style synth and see what that does. Just like I was explaining to you, bit crushing can be very useful, not just in gaming type music, but for special effects, drum breaks, really important, and transitions in songs. Transition game's still crazy and all that. Now, just for added measure, I'm gonna show you guys what you can do with a transition by just bit crushing something. I think it's a really easy way to spice up a track, and you don't have to do too much. You don't have to go all the way with it either. It can make for really smooth segues from one part to the next. So let's do that. All right, so we have gone through like tape saturations and gone through filters, noise, all that stuff, bit crushing. Now we're going to get into distortion. Distortion and saturation, you know, they're just varying levels of the same thing, but back in the day, things were a little bit less clean. They just distorted by nature. And that's just because of the type of gear that was being used. It doesn't matter if it was the capacitors or resistors that were inside. Maybe they were using germanium components at the time, which are known to be a little grittier sounding than others. But yes, adding some distortion to tracks on top of the other things like high passing, low passing, and adding a little bit of tape saturation really bring that vintage feel. So we're gonna try that out right now. So there you have it. How do we go about making things sound a little bit more vibey, a little bit more retro, vintage, old school? Stop using so much high end would be the way that you go for this. And this doesn't necessarily apply for metal a lot because, you know, we always want that shimmery high end, and we always want to get really clean pick attack, which is going to have sharp transients. It's going to be a lot of treble. Guitars are going to live in that mid range, and we're going to be hearing that stuff. But when you want to go back in time and you want to understand how to do that, just remember, using filters are your friend. It's a very simple thing that people overlook all the time. But at the end of the day, basically using different types of noise is what's going to get you there. And whether that is using some type of tape or VHS cassette type plug-in, or whether it's using bit crushing or a little bit of distortion, whatever you have to do to introduce something that's a little bit more chaotic, because recording has gotten so sterile these days that we're now trying to revert back to how things were then. And yeah, you're gonna hear effects like this all over mainstream radio, all over songs that are peaking on the Billboard. It is something nostalgic about it, and we're kind of going through that revival right now. So I thought it made a lot of sense to make this video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Make sure to check out JST Lo-Fi. It's in the description below if you want to get your 14-day free trial. And if you're an engineer on the come up, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, you only have to do it one time. And tap that bell for notification so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, my friends, I'll catch you later.